Marvel Studios has been hinting that at some point, Captain America would become worthy of wielding Mjolnir. And they even teased us with this all the way back in Age of Ultron. After all this time, we finally got the payoff we were waiting for in Endgame, and it was well worth the wait. Today in this video, we're going to talk about how Steve Rogers was finally able to use an epic Uru weapon in battle. The rules of Uru metal weapons can be kind of confusing, so don't worry if you found yourself scratching your head about it. It's a god-tier material which is forged in the heart of a dying star. During Avengers Infinity War, Star-Lord asks why everyone doesn't have a magical Uru weapon, and Thor explains that few people could handle the physical or mental strain necessary to wield such a weapon. During the first Thor movie, Odin decided to punish Thor for being arrogant and insubordinate by cursing his favorite toy. He can have it back, he just has to be worthy of it. What does that even mean? No idea, but apparently Thor managed to figure it out by the end of the movie. The importance of Mjolnir's unique nature and its ability to determine worthiness was also brought up during Avengers Age of Ultron, when various heroes tried to lift it. In the end, only Vision could really wield it to any useful extent. But in the comic books, Captain America has wielded Mjolnir before, and many fans were confident this could happen at some point in the MCU. Actually, tons of people use Mjolnir in the comic books, so maybe the MCU criteria is a bit more strict. The first time Captain America picked up the hammer in the comics, it was pretty anticlimactic. He simply used it and handed it back to Thor like it was no big deal. But the second time, in the Fear Itself event, we got the lightning blast and a cry of Avengers Assemble, which was more like the movie version we ended up seeing. One of the major movie moments of Avengers Endgame featured Cap wielding Mjolnir, casting lightning bolts, and just generally being amazing in the battle against Thanos. So now the question is, what changed between Age of Ultron and Endgame to make Captain America worthy of wielding Mjolnir? Clearly, it wasn't an issue of physical or mental strength, since we also saw him using Stormbreaker, although Thor was less than happy to share that weapon. After all, one of his defining characteristics has always been that he's a genuinely good and virtuous person. So it's hard to think of what would have made him unworthy up until this point. You might be trying to think of what changed between Age of Ultron and Endgame, and of course, we have Infinity War and the Decimation, which were pretty major. But we didn't really see Cap change much since then, except of course getting sadder just like everybody else. However, there might have been a moment prior to Age of Ultron which may have tarnished the typically pristine image of Captain America. We're talking about the events of Captain America Civil War, when the Avengers were split apart and Cap was forced to battle against his friends. These battles were a result of the controversial Sokovia Accords, and Steve and Tony found themselves on opposite sides of the issue. But it's another point of conflict from the movie we think is the true impetus to Cap becoming worthy. In Captain America the Winter Soldier, Captain America learns that his best friend forever, Bucky Barnes, was responsible for the deaths of Howard and Maria Stark. But Cap apparently felt Tony wouldn't appreciate the distinction, so he decided to keep this huge secret to himself, so it could blow up at pretty much the worst possible moment. Spoiler alert, it did not work out well for him. Instead of being honest with his friend and fellow Avenger, Cap kept this a secret. He claimed it was to protect Bucky, but it seems like there was also a selfish aspect. Nobody likes to be the bearer of bad news, especially when it involves people you care about. Keeping that kind of thing to yourself is toxic, and it's something many of us have experienced in the real world. Turns out the Super Soldier Serum makes you physically stronger, mentally sharper, but not any better at navigating awkward and uncomfortable social situations. Simply put, Steve Rogers was a bad friend to Tony Stark by keeping that a secret. It was even sadder considering during Age of Ultron, Tony confessed his worst fears to everyone, and Steve promised they would face them together. And then as Tony yelled in a fit of rage, Steve wasn't there with him when things went down during Infinity War. But later on, when undoing the Decimation seems like a possibility, Tony Stark apologizes for his outburst and notes that resentment is toxic, and he wants to move forward. But once it came out during Civil War, Steve and Tony were able to reaffirm their friendship and their respect for one another. Honestly, when they went back to the Battle of New York and Tony asked Steve if he could trust him, and Steve said yes, it was a really emotional moment for us fans who have watched their journey throughout the MCU both together and apart. It's nice to see that Cap isn't perfect, but we all love him anyway. What do you think about Captain America wielding Mjolnir in Avengers Endgame? Did you enjoy this epic moment, or did you think it was too over the top? Let us know in the comment section below, and then click on that subscribe button for more videos from us here at CBR. Thanks for watching!